Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining Women's Way for the Closing the Gender Wealth Gap forum on why narratives matter, shaping change by sharing our stories. I'm Diane Cornman-Levy, the Chief Disruptor of Women's Way, and I'm really delighted that you all decided to spend the next 90 minutes with us on this beautiful summer day. While we wait for folks to sign on, I would appreciate you taking the poll located in the chat box. We want you to know if this is your first time attending a Women's Way event. So if you could just fill that in real quickly, we would greatly appreciate it. So I'm very excited about today's forum. And today's forum is part of a year-long series whose purpose is to educate different stakeholders about the drivers of the gender wealth gap and action steps each of us can take to help close the gender wealth gap. We started this series in October 2020, and we conducted sessions that addressed topics such as strengthening the early childhood education sector, investing in women-owned businesses, gender and racial disparities in healthcare, increasing access to affordable housing, improving financial capability of women, promoting equity in grant making, and saving for retirement. Today's session, which I think is really critical to advancing gender and racial equity, is going to focus on narratives and how gender justice work is narrative change work. You will hear from 4 amazing speakers and a moderator who will address the issue from provider advocacy and lived experience perspectives. You will also have opportunities to ask questions to the speakers via the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to address as many of your questions as possible. We will also record the session today and make it available for you to view if you want to watch it again, and for those who cannot attend today's session. Finally, to create a safe space for all of us to engage in this honest and challenging discussion, we ask each of you to abide to the session norms listed in the chat box. So before we introduce you to the panelists and moderator, again, I'm very excited about these amazing women. Kelly Shear, the director of the Gender Wealth Institute, and I are going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes providing an overview of the economic state of women and children, why Women's Way is investing its resources in addressing the gender wealth gap, and explaining how narratives shape our mental models and build power for certain groups of people while undermining and devaluing others. So let me just go, and we're going to present the slides right now. And I first want to just thank our session sponsors. We try to keep these forums free for everyone so everyone can attend this. And this is made possible by people sponsoring our event: Ballard Spar, Pico, Jefferson, Comcast, Cozen O'Connor, and particularly the Women's Initiative group at Cozen O'Connor. So thank you for sponsoring this event. So real briefly, who is Women's Way if you don't know us? We are the region's leading nonprofit organization dedicated to the advancement of women and girls and those who identify as themselves in the gender expansive community, and gender and racial equity. We are actually the first umbrella funding federation in the United States specifically dedicated to women's issues. So we've heard a lot about the economic state of women, and I do share this during every session in case this is your first session with us. But pre-COVID, we were not in a good place in terms of the economic state of women. 80% of workers were living paycheck to paycheck. Majority of them are women. 40% of adults were not able to cover an unexpected $400 expense. And of course, when COVID came, it just really destabilized a lot of women and their families because they were in such an economic precarious state before the pandemic. And Philadelphia had the highest poverty rate, we still do, above about 25% among the 10 largest cities, and the largest demographic group of living in poverty are women, ages 25 to 34, and we'll explain some reasons why. And then worse is the gender wealth gap, and this is not new data since COVID, and they're saying it's worse, but single white women own 32 cents on the dollar compared to single white men. Black and Latinx women own less than a penny. And again, there's historical systemic reasons for this. And we wanted to add the retirement gap. We talked about this in the last session on retirement, saving for retirement. 80% of women are likely to be living in poverty by age 65. These are all connected. And Kelly Shear, the director of Gender Wealth Institute, is going to talk about why this is and how narratives play into this very poor economic state of women. So post-COVID, we know that nationally, 2.5 million women lost their jobs or dropped out of the workforce, right? And I think almost 2 million still remain unemployed. So we were actually over 50% of the workforce were made of women. Now workforce participation rates have hit 30-year lows because of the pandemic. Some of the driving factors: women account for 74% of employment in high contact occupations. So some of those jobs were stopped during the pandemic, and some just were not willing to take that risk in terms of their health. Lack of childcare infrastructure or family-forward workplace policies. Women can't afford to go to work because of the pay disparities. Lower paying jobs are dominated by women, and childcare, lack of affordable childcare, is really hurting women economically, and some literally cannot even afford to stay in the workforce because of the cost of childcare. We have one of the worst care infrastructures of any major industrialized country in the world. So it's a big issue. So what are some of the causes? We know there's pay inequities. Women earn less than men, and it's not just because of occupational segregation, which is when fields dominated by women are paid less, they have less benefits, but also even in the same positions, women still earn less than men. They tend to be overcharged for mortgages. They get denied more mortgages, even though they had better rates of paying back their mortgages. Very vulnerable to predatory lending. And what's really interesting, a lot of women, and the fastest growing college grads are women, particularly Black and brown women, yet they also hold 2/3 of all student debt. So people say just go to college and that will take care of everything. That's not true. We're going to do another session on that in the fall. Occupational segregation, I already said, fields dominated by women are valued less and they get paid less. Again, we provide the majority of unpaid caregiving. Today, we're going to talk about narratives and how this is actual cause of the gender wealth gap, narratives grounded in white supremacy. So if we want an inclusive economy, we need to invest in women and their families, because women are the backbone of our economy. Research has shown that when gender, wage, and wealth equity exists, it positively affects the country's overall health, education, economic indicators. Research has also shown that parental assets are the strongest predictors of children attending and graduating from college. So the socioeconomic status of the primary caregiver, who are predominantly still women, has a huge impact on the health and well-being of children. And then decreasing wage deficits and increasing wealth opportunities are not only poverty reduction strategies, they're economic growth strategies. So if we close this gender wealth gap, it would result in a huge GDP gain of over $4 trillion, or over $13,000 per person by 2025. So empowering women, as they say, is smart economics. So if you want to do it from a purely economic reason, it's good to invest in women. So what do we need to create an inclusive, equitable economy? We need a new normal that requires a new, bold vision for an economy that provides solutions to centuries of systemic exclusion, extraction, exploitation. So we're going to talk about this and how narratives have actually driven some of this exploitation and how it upholds systems of extraction and exploitation. So, God, when are we going to launch this? September last year, I guess we launched the Gender Wealth Institute. That was built on 4 years of something called the Women's Economic Security Initiative, where we built partnerships with over 82 partners to really improve the economic security of women. And so we launched it, we transitioned it to the Gender Wealth Institute because we really wanted wealth and gender in the title, because it's not enough for women to get jobs. We really need to build wealth and assets. So the Gender Wealth Institute is about really advancing research and practical solutions that build wealth for women who are economically insecure. And our approach is really about convening, innovating, and mobilizing. So we're the backbone of the Gender Wealth Institute. We convene stakeholders from all walks of life, from different sectors. Really important are those most impacted by systemic exploitation and oppression. And this is women of color. And you're going to be hearing from some amazing women during this panel today. But they are at the table, co-creating strategies, really driving the learning, helping us figure out what's the best way to address these inequities. And we build solutions together, we test them, we pilot test them, and we help coordinate efforts across multiple partners to build a capacity to address the systemic drivers of the gender wealth gap, and ultimately mobilize and organize actors to engage in systems transformation and systems change. And we will argue today, you cannot change systems without changing narratives. So I'm going to hand this off now to our wonderful, amazing leader of the Gender Wealth Institute, Kelly Sheard. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. All right, so I'm here to provide framing and context for the connection between white supremacy and the gender wealth gap, as well as the significance of narratives in justice work. So why are we even talking about white supremacy? You might associate this with the ugly behavior of fringe white nationalists, but white supremacy is more than that. It's a tool used to create, maintain, and perpetuate all gender and racial inequities. We want to move people from thinking of white supremacy as the work of a group like the KKK, and instead understand it as the operating framework or the motherboard of how inequalities work. Next slide. This slide provides an explanation of what white supremacy is and what it is there to do. So think of it like a tool. White supremacy is a pseudo-scientific concept of race to create whiteness and a hierarchy of racialized value in order to protect and hoard power, disconnect and divide, and justify dehumanization. Next slide. White supremacy functions in a variety of systems. Take a minute to review some of these examples. The common thread is the privileging of the constructed definition of whiteness and the dehumanization of all others. Whiteness becomes an asset. So take a minute to review. Next slide. I'll also give a little bit of time for you to read this slide and quote. It's important to know that white supremacy is not just a tool used by white people. If you are a person of color and you have ever avoided the sun in fear of getting darker, if you've ever believed code switching can gain you respect, if you've ever used the word ghetto to describe majority Black neighborhoods, white supremacy is present in you as well. And rather than feel shame about that, consider the three things that white supremacy is here to do: justify dehumanization, hoard power, and disconnect and divide people from each other. Who benefits from you practicing and upholding white supremacy? Take a minute to let you read. Next slide. As it relates to gender injustices, such as the gender wealth gap and other things, we draw your attention to a concept known as racialized patriarchy. If white supremacy is the operating framework or the motherboard, racialized patriarchy is a specific code that enables the stratified exploitation of all genders other than male. Next slide. White supremacy is how we get to a place where people other than white have deliberate unequal access, marginalized experiences, and diminished expressions of power. Racialized patriarchy is how we understand the continual interplay of race and gender in the expression of power. Next slide. In racialized patriarchy, there's a process of racialization, where people are separated and categorized by hierarchy for the purpose of privileging whiteness. Racialization involves pseudoscience, faux biology, and cultural hegemony. A concurrent process involves the promotion of the gender binary. Patriarchy is the use of the male-female binary to monopolize social, political, and economic power to privilege men. It's a system where cultural ideas about value are attributed to and played out through sex roles. It falsely claims that biology drives a common gendered experience. Racialized patriarchy takes the myths of racialization and the myths of the gender binary to reinforce the goals of white supremacy. And again, that is to hoard power, to disconnect and divide, and to justify dehumanization. Next slide. The economic legacy of white supremacy and racialized patriarchy show up as pay disparities, as lost time and generational wealth transfers, as higher levels of debt and little to no protection from abject poverty. This slide shows some of the ways we continue to uphold the economic interest of the powerful through racialized patriarchy. Next slide. So today, we look at the significance of narratives in our work to remedy gender and racial inequalities. Narratives are the stories we tell and the way we make sense of the world. Narratives turn information into knowledge with meaning. They impact how we think, feel, remember, imagine, and relate. When thinking about inequities, narratives feed the structure. Next slide. Our work with narratives aims to shift the conditions that are holding the problem in place. Next slide. Narratives meet us at the bottom of this upside down pyramid. They take us from the individual to the collective, forcing us to see patterns and contend with solving problems at the level of the political and the personal. Next slide. Dominant narratives live in our subconscious and they're all around us. We believe that liberation requires us to be clear on the scripts we're running on. And so here are just a few dominant narratives of white supremacy and racialized patriarchy. I'll leave some time for folks to review this slide as well and think about where you might see yourself in some of these dominant narratives and maybe what's missing. Next slide. Part of the work of liberation is to uncover the plot, that is, the intentions, actions, and outcomes. If we are to move towards justice and liberation, we have to address the stories that shape our understanding of who we are, how we got here, and how we free us. Next slide. I'm pleased to move into our program by sharing a bit about our Changing the Narrative Fellowship program. Our fellowship is an intensive learning community and advocacy training. Women learn how to develop narratives based on their lived experience with poverty or related issue. Our focus is on storytelling for social change and impacting systems such as philanthropy, media, and policy that shape the conversation around poverty. Our fellowship contains a therapeutic process group, individual therapy, peer community, and access to a network of partners. Our goal is to center and elevate the voices of women with lived experience so that justice and liberation are achievable. Next slide. I'm happy to share the bios of our panelists who are all involved in our latest cohort as fellows or as a therapeutic leader in our storytelling work. So first up, we have Tamara Marie Cobb. Tamara is a mother and certified community health worker in Philadelphia. Her passion for working in her community was developed in the late 1990s as an AmeriCorps volunteer. She's continued to work in the community where she works to be a change agent, to continue to learn and grow and be an advocate for healing. Welcome, Tamara. Next, we have Alisha Gillespie. Alisha is an advocate for the Building Health and Wealth Network at Drexel University. She has been on the Leadership Advisory Council for over 3 years and has been instrumental in helping change policies for TANF clients. Welcome, Alisha. Christina Rogers is a mother, grandmother, and first-generation homeowner. She has vast experience working in the transportation and security sector while a full-time single mother. Welcome, Christina. Reggie Jones is a college administrator, educator, psychotherapist, and consultant. supporting students, clients, and organizations to deconstruct how inequity and injustice impacts our relationship to self, our psychological well-being, community, and organizational cultures, deeply influences who she is and how she sees the world. Reggie believes strongly that everyone has a story that is shaped by our personal histories of joy, struggle, and accomplishment. She teaches digital storytelling as a component of her metacognition course for first-generation college students at Bryn Mawr College. Digital storytelling is a powerful way to give voice to rarely heard narratives and support the creation or further refinement of bridging where we come from with the lives we aim to live. She's also a part-time lecturer at University of Pennsylvania School of Social Policy and Practice. A feminist, anti-oppressive social work lens is core to her teaching, empowering future social workers to interrogate what is believed to be known and cultivate curiosity to reclaim subjugated knowledge in alternative narratives and histories is foundational to her pedagogy. Welcome, Reggie. Next slide. And finally, our moderator. Samantha Porter joined the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia in July 2020 as the Community Engagement Advisor and Outreach Manager. In this role, she leverages her education and personal experiences to lead work that promotes economic growth in low and moderate income communities and improving access to opportunity in underserved communities across the 3rd District. She spent the preceding 3 years working in the administration of Mayor Jim Kenney. She began her service in 2017 as Director of Place-Based Initiatives for the West Philadelphia Promise Zone and Choice Neighborhoods Initiatives. She joined the Mayor's Policy Office in 2019 as the Deputy Director for Policy and Strategic Initiatives. She previously worked in the New York City office of ICF, a global consulting and technology services provider to commercial and government clients. Her role at ICF built upon her experience as program manager in the Sandy Recovery Division of the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, where she led the design and implementation of a $40 million program to rebuild low to moderate income housing. She also managed and directed the Sandy Housing Counseling Program. The first 10 years of her career were spent at Thomas Jefferson University in federal grants management. A graduate of Temple University, where she majored in German and political science, Porter earned a Master of Public Administration degree from Fels Institute of Government at the University of Pennsylvania. Welcome to Samantha, and I'll kick it over to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Kelly and Diane, for kicking off this incredible program. I also want to just thank Women's Way for the opportunity to join today's events. In your opening remarks, you really laid out some critical details related to the work that Women's Way has had to do, and then the individuals who are associated with Women's Way. And I know it's been quite an organizational journey, which has no doubt had its challenges. So the reason I'm so excited to be here is because I love this work around narrative change, because it really asks us to confront the lens through which we understand the world and our place in it. And I'm so excited to hear from all of our fellows who are on the panel, as well as Reggie today. So as I welcome everyone else into the room, I want to just give us a moment because there's a lot we're going to unpack here today. So if our audience members and our panelists would just take a moment to just take a deep breath and settle into this space and open yourselves up to what I know is going to be a really powerful conversation. So as we get started, I'm going to invite each of our fellows and Reggie to please just briefly share a little bit about the organization you represent or your personal experiences and why you chose to be on today's panel. And I'm going to start with Tamara Marie Cobb.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so very much for that wonderful introduction, Samantha. I decided to join, well, actually, I was chosen during the interview to become a part of the Women's Way Fellowship. And I became so excited when I found out a lot of the background, the work that Women's Way does. So I just was pretty much excited to learn and to become an advocate. And I'm from the Clarify Family Self-Sufficiency Program. Thank you.
Fantastic, Tamara. Thank you so much. I want to move over to Alisha. Alisha Gillespie, tell us a little bit about why you're here today and your personal experience related to that.
Hello, everyone. I'm here because, like Tamara, I was chosen. It was like a last minute situation with me. I'm through Clarify as well, an FSS program through PHA. I'm here because this program interested me to be a part of advocacy and just to talk. I love to talk. I love to advocate. I love to voice my opinion because I know it's valid. And I'm grateful to be in this program, honestly.
We're glad you're here, last minute and all. We're so grateful you had the time. Christina, I would like to invite you. Same thing. Briefly tell us why you're here.
I'm here on the panel. I joined because I lived in poverty. I had a story to tell. I believe it could be a great asset and, to other people and women. And I also believe that I had a chance to finally speak for those who can't speak. And I just had a great opportunity. So I took the opportunity to share as much as I could and be as honest as I could.
Thank you, Christina. And Reggie, if you would share a little bit about your organization and how that relates to your personal experience and why you chose to be on today's panel.
Sure, thank you. I just want to thank everyone for that great opening and say hello to everyone and just say how honored I am to be here. I am the CEO of the Hedera Group, which is a psychotherapy and consulting firm that I've started. And I'm just really grateful to have been a part of this. I think storytelling is so powerful. It's been something that has been really important, particularly to the Black community, forever prior to the Middle Passage. I think it's something that has liberated us, has helped us counter dominant oppressive narratives that seek to destroy us, our mind, body, and spirits. Our stories, they reveal hidden power dynamics and systemic isms that often rob us of opportunities, but they also create opportunities, those stories, to develop strategies and coalitions and alliances to be able to thwart those oppressions. And I think that's really important. And finally, I guess I would say our stories are also opportunities to affirm our humanity, which I think is so important and is something that white supremacy seeks to strip, particularly of Black and brown folks. And it offers an opportunity for us to be able to engage in fellowship and healing and community and in love. And I said finally, but this is my final point. As a trained psychotherapist, I believe in the power of stories. And I believe in the power of stories to also be able to open up access to our unconscious and our subconscious so that we have more authority and power over what happens in our lives. I believe in the power of stories to also disrupt the social unconscious so that there can be different narratives and stories that are told of people who are marginalized in our communities. So I think storytelling is an incredibly powerful tool. And I'm grateful to have been able to participate and also to be able to hear some of the stories of the fellows who are in the program. So thank you.
Reggie, you couldn't hear me over here snapping, but I am so glad that you shared what brought you here. Mm-hmm. So now I really want to turn to our fellows, and Kelly introduced and Diane introduced Women's Way's Narrative Change Fellowship Program, and this is a really incredible model and opportunity. So Tamara, Alisha, and Christina, I really want to ask you, since you're currently involved, why did you join the fellowship program, and tell us about the impact that it's had on you thus far? And we'll start with Christina, if you could just share, and then we'll go on to Alisha and Tamara.
I honestly joined because it was my first opportunity to actually get my story out and be heard and not judged or hushed and everything. The impact that it had on me, I had a lot going on throughout my time in the fellow, and it has allowed me to be stronger. I had faced some tough things going on, and it has allowed me to be strong and to keep my voice up and not to continue to be a victim of a lot of circumstances of things that I was going to being a victim or just being a Black woman. And I was able to, and I'm doing it and I'm basically fighting and being strong and taking control of my own life and not being dictated on what's really going on with me. So I'm here to have a voice and be confident by myself. It helped me be confident too.
I love that. Alisha?
For me, it really gave me the opportunity to talk to other women of all different backgrounds, nationalities, situations. It showed me that I wasn't alone, that it is a space that you can trust people and tell your story without being judged, without being in a predicament where people is looking at you like, instead of congratulating you for overcoming things. For me, I was always quiet. So when I finally found my voice, I couldn't stop. It was like whatever opportunity presented itself, I was there to speak up for those who can't speak up or who want to speak up. And I believe that I'm so grateful for that because I'm able to inspire others, not only from the Black community, but being a parent, being a mother, being a sister, just from all different areas. So this really showed me that I can be in a room full of women and it's all love, it's unity there.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much, Alisha. And Tamara, tell us about what impact it's had on you, the fellowship program.
Oh, a tremendous impact. My way of thinking. Just as my fellows had mentioned about some of the things that they have gone through, being able to have that safe space for us to talk. Again, the fellowship has opened up a lot of doors for me, educational, put framework around a lot of things that are happening in my life and the world as it is today. So I'm able to have a better understanding. And it's, I believe, helping me on the right path of what I would like to do, and that's to be a change agent. And as my fellows had said, it's definitely been a pleasure to be invited, and I'm totally grateful.
I love this. I heard so many things there about, you know, a judgment-free space and just building out your confidence and, you know, being able to be a leader in your communities and trust. I hear that too. So I'm really, really appreciate what you shared. We heard Kelly and Diane sort of describe narratives and how narratives are shaped by our like mental models. They use that pyramid, that inverted pyramid, to talk about like the model is at the bottom, and we build power across certain groups, you know, based on those mental models, and we can undermine or devalue others. And so I wonder, what narratives have you heard in your lives? And this question is for Christina, Alisha, and Tamara. What narratives have you heard in your lives that harm and devalue women, especially women of color? And Alisha, I see your hand up, so I'll let you start, and then we'll move on to Tamara and Christina.
Thank you, Ms. Samantha. For me, it was that stigmatism of being an angry Black woman that always rung with me, being a child and then to my adulthood, understanding what it really meant and being afraid to show your emotion because of that stigma. I think it broke a lot of barriers for me because it showed me that it's okay to have an emotion, but it's all how you perceive it. It's not how others perceive it. I think that is the most thing that woke me up for me, was that stigma of being an angry Black woman. And, you know, you're not allowed to be upset. You're not allowed to be angry. You're not allowed to be sad. You're not allowed to, you have to put on this persona of being strong all the time, when people forget that you are a human. Things happen. You don't understand a lot of things. So I think for me, being a Black woman and being afraid to show real raw emotions. And I realized a lot of the times I hid it because I was scared of presenting my emotions to other people because it was judged as being angry, as being bitter, as being sad, as being uh, uh, just angry, and you just, or, you need to relax and all of that. So my whole thing is I'm learning how to be unapologetically me. And this program showed me how to be that. Whether you sad, whether you happy, you can be unapologetically you. People always going to have a stigma, the stamp on you, but it's really what you think of yourself.
I just wrote that down. Unapologetically you. This is beautiful. Tamara, can you talk a little bit about what narratives have you heard that harm and devalue women, especially women of color?
Oh, I was same thought as Alisha, angry Black woman, ghetto, welfare queens, those kinds of things. Some of them I haven't been called, directly, but just the thought of how we are viewed. I can elaborate a little bit about angry Black woman. I know for myself, being in rooms and roles as in the workforce, dealing with people who do not look like me, often misunderstand my passion for anger. And it's not angry, it's just like I'm passionate about something, and that has been hurtful to me, and job roles then and even up to now. The welfare queen, and using public assistance, being told by people, oh, you're going to be on public assistance for the rest of your life. All those things I didn't realize until here recently, being a part of fellowship, have been damaging to my mindset. Thank you.
No, thank you, Tamara. Christina, I want to invite you into the conversation, and then I want to invite Reggie into this question as well. So Christina, what narratives have you heard, and how have they impacted you?
I'm a piggyback off of the angry Black woman, and also being mentally unstable, and far as them making narratives and white supremacy. A doctor came up with a whole situation for me that I had hepatitis for the 2 years that I had cancer. And because I was able to keep questioning them and make them retest me, it came out that I didn't have it. But they so cocky, they still haven't called me. And then for 2 years, that did really mentally bother me. So when they say as Black women that we're mentally unstable, do they put us in these positions to be unstable? Because that was really hard for me for 2 years to think that I had a disease that I didn't have and was prescribed medication for this or whatever. So it still trickled down, and he made a whole narrative that I quoted from my mom. He had a whole story for me, and that mentally affected me too. Like, because he had a whole narrative that he made up himself some type of way. So they put us in predicaments to be unstable and feel unstable, or to be angry. And then if they feel we act out on it, then they label us. Then we're angry. But they really make their own narratives for us. And we have to take it or don't take it. But the minute that you speak up, then you're less of a person.
That's an incredible story, Christina. And I'm so sorry that happened, that you had to experience that. But I'm also glad that you're able to share with us that really clear example about narrative showing up in your life. Reggie, I want to invite you into the conversation to talk a little bit about what narratives you've heard that harm and devalue women, especially women of color.
Yeah, I guess first I just want to say, Christina, I just really appreciate you sharing that. I want to just acknowledge the power of counter narratives, which is something that Tamara, Alisha, and Christina are all talking about. The importance of being able to have your own internal dialogue, or people around you that affirm a counter narrative that does not diminish you, that does allow you to question and be curious, that allows you to be angry and be able to express your emotions. That is so important, because otherwise we internalize those narratives, those negative narratives that really try to diminish us and make us small. And then we are actually following the script of white supremacy. We really are. So the counter narrative is where liberation is. And I'm just grateful to hear these stories and to be able to have witnessed Alisha, Tamara, and Christina really sort of elevate their voices to offer their counter narratives and also to embody those counter narratives. I think that is so important for all of us. And so counter narratives that I've heard are similar to everything that everyone has said here. Being a single parent, I myself am a single parent. A good example, my mother grew up sharecropping. My father does not have a high school diploma. So the narrative for my brother and I, in terms of what we would be able to achieve living in North Philadelphia, was pretty abysmal. So, that counter narrative piece, is so important. And having people and systems, and people who have power in systems, who believe in your potential and also themselves are willing to hold their own dissonance around sort of like a counter narrative, and being willing to elevate voices and create opportunities and access is so important. So I just want to just acknowledge the power of the counter narrative. Yeah, that's where freedom is. That really is.
I love that, because I see in the chat, that counter narrative is where the liberation is. And if, I think about my own journey, striving for a harmful narrative, for overcoming that versus striving for my own narrative, that's really powerful. And that's what I hear you all saying, is now you strive around the narrative that you create. So that's really, really powerful. And I'm like moved right now. So I'm going to try to focus on these questions. I wonder, because we're talking a lot about equity, the outcome around this is gender equity. And I wonder if you each could talk about, why is gender equity work actually narrative change work? That seems to be a connection that the opening remarks made. So maybe we could start with Tamara. Can you just talk a little bit about why gender equity work is narrative change work?
Well, I just want to start off by saying, being a woman, we have power beyond what we often realize and know. And we tend to go to work and work really hard, raise families, and often sometimes in single parent situations, and really focus on trying to make a better way of life, for ourselves and our family. And I think that, I'm not going to say I think, I know that is really vital for us to be looked upon as value to our communities and to our country, because I don't know if I'm going too far, forgive me, getting a little nervous, but I just think it's just really important that people see the value in the work that we do, because we are change agents. And I just hope, I'm glad for also, the reminders of the breakdown about white supremacy, because every time I listen, I find out something different. And I would definitely, for myself, would like to rally and be on the bullhorn and really, put it out there to everyone, the importance of it, of valuing us, because we are responsible for families and so many other things. Thank you.
I love that. Alisha, I saw a little twinkle in your eye there. I want to invite you in on that question.
She hit the nail right with the hammer. Being a single mother, a Black woman, I'm raising 3 sons. I think we don't give ourselves enough credit. Again, people can say whatever they want, but I think we also have to shift our lens on ourselves and make sure that we are doing the work and realizing that we can do. I think it's what we allow. Is what we think of ourselves, what we allow people to think of us. I think what Tamara and myself, what I was not in my head too, I'm like, Dad, I understand being in positions where, where people looked upon at me like, Dad, you raising 3 sons, you by yourself. you're in public housing. So they try to put you in this box, like you don't want nothing more for yourself. And how you figure that? Like my current situation don't have anything to do with my destiny. That don't mean that's where I want to be at. So I think for me, speaking out more about that and advocating more about those scenarios and just seeing all different types of things, I feel like it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a reason why I was put in certain situations, and to show that you can rise above any occasion, wherever you came from, whatever background you came from, you can do whatever you feel. I think it's just putting yourself out there and not living below the means of what others think of you, because it's always going to be what somebody else think. I think we need to just come a little higher and rise above the occasion, and know that we can put our minds to things that come together. We can knock a lot of these policies down for us women, because women is really a strong force. We're really stronger than what we think. I think we really just need to come together collectively and just do something and talk about it and make these conversations more common. What you don't know can hurt you.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about policy in just a few minutes. So I'm glad you raised that, Alisha. But before we move on to that and talk a little bit more about the actual program, Christina, I wonder if you had anything that you'd like to add why gender equity work is narrative change work.
It's worthy, because I myself, once again, when I was in the market of purchasing my home or whatever, I just needed that like one opportunity, that one boost, that one chance. I went through realtors. I feel like once again, a white male was showing me houses where he think I should be at. He didn't show me the nice houses in the nice neighborhoods or in the better neighborhoods or whatever. So, and back with the politicians, they make it where people bid against single households. So they make it harder for us to, how can we purchase, and we going against households with two incomes and stuff like that or whatever. Like they have it set up where it's hard for us to win. Like they got rules in place that make it almost impossible to make it equal in any way or shape or whatever. It's just not equal, and they give us very little limitations of where they want us to be at.
Now you're talking about the structures and that sort of structural impact that these concepts, this I like the way Kelly put it, like white supremacy is our like motherboard, right? Like we create structures around that. So I really appreciate that. Reggie, I want to turn to you a little bit, because you come into this work, with your training as a psychotherapist, and I just wonder, how have you been impacted personally and professionally by your work with the fellows? And also if you could share some of the insights that you've received as you've participated in this work.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with hope. That's the word that comes to me, and hope for many reasons. So I want to say hope in the ability to disrupt the dominant narrative, particularly around Black and Brown women. Hope that nonprofits will recognize the importance. Other nonprofits like Women's Way is sort of in some ways is leading sort of the change, but that other nonprofits will follow and recognize the importance of really narrative sort of storytelling and really honoring like participants in those programs, their stories, and not only honoring those stories. When I say honoring, that's actually a verb. So it actually means taking action and empowering people to not only share their narratives, but to create access to resources so they can decide how they might want to refine, change, or recreate their narratives. And I think that's tremendously important. And not just, with the housing voucher. And I'm not saying housing vouchers are bad, because they are very important, but to really create opportunities for housing vouchers, for access to political leaders, to be able to use your voice and to be able to go to Harrisburg, maybe to sort of, do some lobbying, to really create a platform. So that hope, I feel hopeful. I really feel very hopeful. And the fellows themselves, their ability to be able to share their narratives, to trust me with their narratives, and then to recognize that they can actually, those narratives are fluid. Like what Alisha said, I think is so powerful, which is why I put, I elevated that in the chat, is that my current situation is not my destiny. So what each of the fellows is acknowledging is that, like, people were able to share their narratives, but they recognize that there's no period at the end of this. Like, there is much more to be done. I have lots of opportunities to evolve. I have dreams about how I want to sort of evolve and recreate myself and reimagine myself and create opportunities for my children and my community. And I have a lot of hope. And I think the other thing is, for myself, I grew up in a household where, we often heard, to whom much is given, much is required. And I can't tell you how often that was drilled into my brother and I. And so that has really been very important to me throughout my life, throughout my career. And so it gave me an opportunity to contribute in that I was able to listen. I was able to use my skills as a psychotherapist to offer resources and support, to support people around goals that they might want to actually pursue and achieve. So I was able to contribute in a meaningful way. And that really, we all have needs and we want to be able to be given to, but we also have things that we all have gifts to give. And that is as important. So that was really important to me, to be able to contribute in that way, to meet these amazing people who are fellows. I mean, Alisha, Tamara, and Christina are pretty phenomenal people. They really are. And their stories, not only their stories, their strategies. I mean, I learned about new resources. I learned about new strategies. It's nice to be able to partner with people and also be like an accomplice in terms of helping them sort of like, move that boulder over to the side a little bit so they can get through, or maybe see their way through. That's really important. So it's been really gratifying. I'm really grateful to Kelly and to Diane for inviting me to participate. And I'm even more grateful to the fellows for trusting me. It's been a privilege. It really has been.
That is so powerful. And, you share one side of it. And so, fellows, I want to invite you to share the other side of it. One of the things is you're talking about really deeply personal stuff, these narratives and how they've impacted you and the experiences that you had. And so I wonder, when sharing your stories, what makes a safe space, or what makes a space safe enough for you to share, what's important for that space? What do you need in that space? And I see Tamara's head already nodding. So I'm going to start with Tamara and then go to Alisha and Christina.
Oh, well, thank you, Samantha. What creates a safe space for me? I believe, like, kind of starting off with like some values about what's expected in the safe space. I believe that sets a tone, for, especially the no judgment is definitely, one of the top 10 ones to go by. But just being around women who are just as vulnerable as you are, and in these sessions, you can feel the energy. That's something that's just there. And I think that's about it. Forgive me, I'm a little nervous. Thank you.
No need to apologize or forgiveness. That is
okay.
Excellent. And I appreciate that, the judgment and the values setting the tone for the space. Alisha, maybe you can follow with what you need for the space to be safe. And then Christina, will move to you.
I think for me, it was vulnerability. I shared a lot of personal things within myself, which I don't consider it personal, because I feel like your life is public and people see you from your life. They know you through your life. So I shared a lot of things that I was coping with, that I was dealing with, and people were able to give me advice about it. And I think trust. And it's not really with the women, it was with myself. Being able to trust myself enough to say, hey, this information that you're giving is not only to help you to get it out, but to help someone else. And that's how I look at my life. Like, it was no coincidence that things happen. It's not only for you, it's for you to help somebody else. get through too, to say that they can go further than where they are, that nothing can stop you besides you.
Thank you, Alisha. Christina, maybe you could share your perspective. What do you need for a space to be safe? What has helped to make this space safe enough?
The all out respect, for one, just knowing that you're respected and you're an individual and a person and that you matter or whatever. Just being able to let your true feelings out and being vulnerable or whatever. I know for me, for the 2 years that I've been diagnosed with cancer, I still haven't been able to bring myself to have therapy or counseling with other people, because I feel like they don't come from where I come from. They don't understand, and they're not really there to help me. They're there for a job. That's their occupation. They don't look like me. They don't understand me or anything. So it's helpful just being around people that come from where you come from, respect you, treat you as an individual, not being judgmental or biased or whatever, and people being patient and wanting to hear, wanting to hear what's going on and try to figure out how to fix it.
You all are sharing. I have a list here of things that you all are sharing. It's so powerful. So, I want to just build on that, because what you're doing with this work is really centering the voices of people who are most impacted by systemic injustice and inequities. And so I wonder if you can talk about, why is that important? Why is it important for us to center the voices of those who are most impacted? And Christina, I know you just answered, but I want to hear from you on that question first, and then we'll move to Tamara and then to Alisha.
It's important because how can you get to the square root cause of the problem if you really don't know what's engaging to cause this problem? How you want to fix it? Like, it's situations where people how can you fix something and you just don't know the root cause of it? You can't fix a situation. And then how do you want to fix a situation if you have no knowledge, no experience from it? It's hard.
Yeah. Tamara?
I have to agree with Christine on that. That's something that I go back and forth with just about every day at work when I'm dealing with my counterparts. In a lot of situations, I hope I'm staying on course. The society that we live in it's like the Band-Aid theory to me. I put a Band-Aid on it, and I work in a system where it's like the in-between between the system and what the person or patient actually needs. So I'm like the buffer. So Christina made a valid sense about knowing what the root causes are can definitely help us start to address a lot of the problems and issues that are currently going on. But it definitely needs to be brought more to the forefront, and hopefully people really start paying attention to it, because once we address those needs, we can move on. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear. Yes, thank you. Alisha?
I think for me is that really grinds my gears is how can people that never been in other people's shoes tell them what can work for them? Everybody comes from different backgrounds, different levels and in their lives as far as money and educational backgrounds. And I think for me is you can't tell people how to live when you haven't lived in their shoes. You can't tell people how to spend or how to conduct themselves when you haven't been living in those areas or dealing with the same issues that they're dealing with. Or you can't say if that was me when it's not you. So I think for me that's the thing that grinds my gears with a lot of politicians, a lot of policymakers, a lot of people who was born way different than us and had different advantages than us. that can tell us how we should maneuver in the situations that we're dealt with. Far as PHA, everything. I feel like they look at us as we below the totem pole, so we're going to give them the bare minimum to shut them up, and that's it. Why can't we expand? Why can't we move where we want to move? Why can't we have different things? You know, the money is there. I think people just not applying it where it need to be at. And people are not hearing from the actual PHA people or the people who are receiving these benefits. You're just basically dictating where the stuff should go and not asking, well, you know, what do you think need to go on? So I think for me, that's what really grinds my gears. And I think about, hey, if I was a politician, I think I would take the extra step. I mean, it's just me. I think I was just built differently, you know, just to step into these communities and see what needs to be fixed.
Yes, Reggie, I want to invite you into this question because I want to ask a follow-up too that's related to this. So maybe you could talk just a little bit about, you know, why it's important to center the voices of those most impacted.
So I guess I want to start with actually, when we don't center the voices of those most impacted, we are perpetuating white supremacy.
Yes.
When we center their voices, we are doing the exact opposite of those three tenets of white supremacy. We are sharing power, we are elevating their humanity, and we are connecting in community and collaborating. And that is so important. So I guess I really just want to say that out loud because I think that's so important. If we want to disrupt, if organizations want to disrupt white supremacy, if we're really talking about doing equity work, we have to center the voices of people who are most impacted. And we have to partner with them, and we have to share our power and our resources, because otherwise, then we are just continuing to perpetuate the same patterns that continue every day and to reinforce these negative stereotypes about people that actually don't fit. So I just think that's really important. Yeah.
Well, you know, Reggie, that I agree with you, and I'm so glad you said that out loud. I think one of the things that it brings into focus is, you know, you're providing service support, mental health support for these fellows. And maybe you could just talk a little bit about why that's important when we ask people, at the moment we're asking people to share their stories and give us that view into their lives, that, you know, your support, what does that mean and why is it important?
I want to say I think it's tremendously important. You know, I've said this before, I'll keep saying it. I mean, anytime that any organization or program is asking folks to share their stories, oftentimes that are rifled with trauma, that there should be some support around mental health, recognizing that our goal should be not to re-traumatize people, but to should be able to support people to actually navigate their trauma, develop skills to actually manage their trauma, to also think about how they want to rewrite those narratives that might even be associated with trauma. I think that's really key. And so in my work, I mean, as a psychotherapist, I think that that's at the core of my work, is to really support people around creating a space where they can share their stories, where they can hear themselves say it out loud, which can be incredibly powerful, where they can consider options. And options, not just sort of like to the outcome of the story, but options about how they feel and think about the story. Options about how they might want to feel and think about the story, and then what skills might get them there. And supporting them around developing those skills, I think is really important. So anytime an organization is thinking about asking people to share their stories, they should be thinking about, before that happens, how are we putting in support, structural supports, to ensure that we are not going to cause any additional harm, that people will have some choice and power to be able to make decisions about how they want to share those stories, that those stories will be respected and honored, and their voices will be elevated, and that those stories will not be used as a way of exploiting the individuals. That's really important, because we have seen that historically in the past, but that people will have ownership of their narratives and will be able to also have a voice in how their stories are used. I think that's really key. Mm-hmm.
No, that's incredible. I wrote that down, protecting people from harm and really being sure that's like at the base, and all the other components then build from there. That's really powerful. So you all have now been finding your voices and understanding these elements of white supremacy. And there's a lot of people who are out here still operating in these systems. You know, we have service providers, we have policymakers, we have funders and people in philanthropy who are all still operating in the system that we currently have. And I guess, you know, I want to just ask, what do we want them to hear? What do we need them to know better with more clarity? How can we ask them to better listen? And this question, I really want to start with the fellows for this question is like, what can service providers do better and listen to in order to listen better? What can policymakers do? What can philanthropy do? So Alisha, I see your head nodding. I'm going to start with you.
I think they need to change. I need to say that they need to look at a lot of these laws and recognize that times have changed. We don't live in those stages and those ages back then, 1950s and 1960s. It changed. Everything changed. When I do advocacy for Drexel, I recognize that the TANF bill haven't been altered with over 50, 60 years. It's been the same price for household family members for over 50, 60 years. So I feel like change, with time, change should come. And I think they need to see, like, it's not us that need to change, it's you guys that need to change. You need to see that, you have to, it's like going to a bank. You can't go into a bank and expect a withdrawal without putting in a deposit. You have to change. You have to be able to see that we need to do something out here. We need to make a difference. And I don't know why they're waiting for us to do it. Like we're the person with the magic wand, but they're in control. They're in the seats that I wish I could be in to say, hey, we need more. We need to hear from outside people. We need to hear from people that's not. And again, I think that really is mind-boggling to me. Like they're all in the same room from Harvard backgrounds, different backgrounds. You guys never been walking down North Philadelphia streets unless you have security. You never seen none of the stuff that we encountered. So it's like, we need to have a conversation. You need to put people like me in front of you. We need to have a conversation and ask us, what do you require from us? Because at this time, we gave it to y'all for so many years. Now it's time for us to take control now.
Alisha, you have a powerful message and a powerful voice. Tamara, I want to invite you. What do service providers and policymakers need to do to better listen and learn?
Well, for myself, I thought about this yesterday and I thought about it again today. I'm going to go with, it would be great if, the show that comes on TV, Survivor, if some of these folks that are philanthropists, policymakers, philanthropists could actually maybe like stay in the community to actually get a feel for it. I mean, I totally agree with Alisha, us advocating and talking about it. And we know the research and stats are going to show, the things that are needed. But I think they really need to maybe 30 days. That might not even be enough, but let's just start out with that, with living in situations, as we know here in Philadelphia, traumas at an all-time high. So they can honestly see sometimes how difficult it is to be present and going back with working every day and raising children, the trauma that we go through living in these kind of situations. So I would like that experiment to happen.
I hear you saying you're gonna, 30 days of Survivor, but I also hear you asking for a level of empathy, like understand where I'm coming from, right? So, that's really powerful. I heard that in what Alisha shared too. So I really appreciate that. Christina, I wonder what you think about that. What can service providers and policymakers do to better listen and learn from, the folks who have experience?
I mean, I obviously believe they need to have advocates in place of people that come from poverty, living of everyday struggles, trying to make it and just maintain to be stable or whatever. Like they got to start somewhere, and you can't start somewhere if you don't know. They go by, I don't know what they go by off. They go by whatever they make up. They got to realize that people do come from the same background but they are individual, and every family gonna have different needs or whatever. Whereas though what might work for me is not gonna work for the next person. But they can change narratives if they give people healthy starts and not have limitations. When I moved out of PHA, I had limitations. PHA said they would only help me if I stay in Philadelphia. I didn't want to be in Philadelphia no more. It wasn't going to work for me, but I still face everyday struggles.
Yeah, Christina, thank you. That is, you all are really helping people to get clear about what's needed. And so I appreciate that. I want to, oh yes, Reggie, please. Yes.
I just want to chime in. I want to say I agree with everything that Christina, Alisha, and Tamara said. I just want to add on for organizations, nonprofits, they need to make dismantling or disrupting white supremacy a priority. I want to quote the brilliant Kelly Sheard: budgets are moral documents, okay? So they need to prioritize actually a commitment to actually, disrupting white supremacy, which would mean that you actually maybe clear the table and invite people who are participants in those programs, people who are directly impacted, to sit at the table to collaborate with a few around what the solutions are, because that actually would disrupt the narratives or the dominant narratives and the dominant narratives around what the solutions are. So yeah, I think, yeah, their budget should demonstrate it. And then their behavior would follow. And for political figures, they'd have to be willing to share power. And I think for us, we need to vote the folks who are not willing to share power out of office and actually create opportunities for people like Tamara and Alisha and Christina to actually run for office so that they can affect some change.
I see snaps. Yes. I want to just take a moment here to invite participants to add some questions in the Q&A. I know the chat has been on fire, lots of love in the chat. So I wonder if we could just take a moment to see what questions are coming from our audience members and or other comments.
Right, there is one question so far from Richard Binswanger. If you had the control that you said you would like, what would you do with it?
Yes. Okay. So we've got this paradigm. Alisha, I see you kind of sitting forward, and then Christina, I want to invite you in on that.
For me, it's like a goal. It's like a passion. My personal, and I don't know if this has anything to do with what we're talking about, but I have a passion for the homeless. I don't think they get a lot of recognition because of their state. But for me, I want to help the homeless. I want to make facilities for the homeless. I want to give them life skills. I want them to be able to be fed, not only physically, but spiritually in the inside, because they're people too. I've noticed even around my area, downtown, everywhere is growing, people that's homeless. I don't think they even get the attention that they need as well. And they're still people. I think people label them because they're homeless and don't even ask or consider why, So that's my personal passion that I shared with you guys, along with many others that I have. But if I wasn't, and if we're now, I'm gonna get on topic here. If I had control to do anything, it would to share more love. I don't think we have love anymore. I think it's more, this world is give, take, and I reciprocated it at all. I think it's more love that need to be given. So if I had control of this world, I would give more love, empathy, more hugs, more I love yous, more, more unity if it was up to me.
I would accept all those hugs and I love yous. Christina, I see you also sitting forward. You want to respond to that question? If you had the power you're talking about, what would you do with it?
If I had the power, I would try to, I would want to make it where though it would be more accessible for women to buy properties, single women preferably, whereas though they wouldn't be able to get bid against with higher incomes and double incomes. I would make it where as though you could give them a chance to relocate as opposed to keep secluded to one area. I would like to change a lot of rules as far as they, just moving from state to state. If somebody want to relocate, like it's no programs. If some people want to start over and do good, I believe since I relocated, me and my family is doing a lot better. And I think some women need a clean slate sometimes.
No, yes, I agree. Choice, agency is what I hear you talking about. Yeah. Tamara?
For myself, if I had a little bit of power, I would like to develop, I guess to start off, maybe like an ad hoc committee of like-minded people to sit around and, well, definitely people, lived experienced people who actually lived in the trenches. They will be in the forefront. I would like to have at the table, and also some like-minded people who are some position of power to help execute some change. I think that's what I would do. I definitely would want to share the power. I wouldn't want it all to myself, but I would just like to work with like-minded people who are on the same page and, that can just give off, offer good input. So, change can, start happening.
I think that's beautiful. And Diane, were there any other questions that came up in the chat that I can share?
There's a lot of just comments that people are just loving this conversation. But not any other questions. One of the things I just wanted to share, the concept of media reparations. And there's actually an organization, I'll put it in the chat. It's called mediareparations.org. And their whole goal is to radically transform who has the capital to tell their own stories by 2070, because really media has done harm, right? And I think we had to be very aware of that. And that's why people in power spend an enormous amount of money and resources to control narratives, because it does have a huge influence on our thinking, on our mental models, which then lead to, policies and practices. So I just think that we need to keep talking about narratives and change and handing the mic to all these amazing women and centering their voices. And like you said, Reggie, giving people the opportunities to now connect and share their stories in different ways. So even though this fellowship is going to end officially in August or so, we're going to continue to work with the fellows to connect them to policymakers, to funders. And I want to say something to funders. We are a funder, right? Funders give out money, but they don't give up power. What they really need to give up is decision-making power, right? That's really giving up something. And so the decision-making power needs to be given to those who are impacted by injustices, that informs where money and resources go, not people in boardrooms who are far removed from these situations, right? And that's how it's structured right now. So I ask all you funders out there, if any of them here, you need to invite these folks at the table, listen to them, let them make decisions about how resources should be distributed, not those in the boardroom.
Powerful, Diane. That is a paradigm shift, that power with instead of power over, that concept. So, there's no good panel discussion without a moment for a call to action. And this, I wanna move into a call to action and ask everyone who's participated today to just respond to, what's one thing a person can do to change narratives that stigmatize and devalue women, which just everybody can just share one thing that a person can do, our audience can walk away with, that would change narratives that stigmatize and devalue women. Reggie, I'll start with you and then we'll move to the fellows.
I would say to be curious. So I would say every time that there is a stereotype is presented, to try to train yourself, because we've been so trained to actually assume that that is sort of the norm, that is, that's the narrative, but to be curious and to really maybe to be curious about where that came from, that particular idea, who it serves, how it might not serve all of us, what the alternative perspective might be, and to tolerate the discomfort with maybe considering stepping into an alternative perspective. I think that's just to be curious. I think I think we've been so, white supremacy is so pervasive. It really is everywhere. And as a result, there are so many things that we just sort of take for granted. We just, of course, Black women don't deserve, to be able to move their families, who have public housing, don't deserve to be able to move their families from North Philadelphia to a community in Delaware or another community. Of course, but why would we not be curious about, a Black mother who might want to move her family out of a community where she's concerned about her safety of her children, the environment. It's an under-resourced community, to a better resource community, a community where she might, for herself, have for her own mental health, might have peace of mind to know that her kids can go out and ride their bikes and play outside, and that the violence that we're experiencing in many of our cities, I want to say in rural communities actually, across the country, would be less, and she would be less worried, and her kids would be safer. Why would we not be curious about, like, how can we help her do that, as opposed to, these are the rules and you have to stay where you are? So I would encourage people to be curious, to challenge themselves to be curious. Yeah, and then to lean into the discomfort.
Yeah. Alisha, I want to go to you. What's one thing that you can offer to people, one thing that a person can do to change narratives, particularly ones that stigmatize women?
I think be gentle with people. I don't think people are giving people the benefit of the doubt as if they were a different nationality. I think because we are Black women and that stamp is on us, we have to live up to what people think, or what word comes to when you hear the word Black. So I think be gentle, and be compassionate. That's the key words that come up to me. Be gentle, understand. Like Miss Reggie said, be curious. Because I think, if I wasn't a Black woman, I'm just stepping out of my Blackness and looking at it from that lens. What I would do as not be so quick to condemn, but to be gentle with a person and understand why the things are the way that they are, and do their research too. I think a lot of people don't do their research. They just go off of what other people have said, and they never really had an encounter with a Black person or a person that wear hair like me or anything. I think, I speak about that all the time. You get that, you get a certain vibe when you go against the grain. People look at you different. So I would think, just have a conversation. Don't be so quick to judge a person because of their hair color, because of the way they walk, because of the way they dress, because of the way they talk. It's a reason behind everything.
Thank you for that. Christina, I wanna ask you to give your call to action, and then Tamara will give you the last word. So Christina, what's one thing a person can do to change narratives that stigmatize and devalue women?
People can give people an opportunity. Just giving a person a small opportunity can open up a lot of doors. It can change generational things. It could change a lot. It could be like a game changer. Just one small opportunity. People don't realize the opportunity can take you a long way. And they don't know what people been through in their walks of life, you know, from childhood on to adolescence as a young adult or whatever. So opportunity can definitely change narratives, give a person a chance, and just change somebody's whole outlook on how things proceed to be or go along as.
Tamara, what's your call to action?
Well, there are definitely a few things. Definitely shifting of the mind. Just being open to let those old thoughts die off. Get rid of that stinking thinking. I'll just throw that out there. And I think most importantly, the education portion of it all. Being, willing to learn. I think that just like we were talking about how narratives do shape, because I sit back and think during this panel discussion about how many narratives have helped me think badly about other people, even including myself. So I just think the openness and willingness to learn, and as Reggie said, to be curious.
I feel like I just got a masterclass here from you all, because the list of things around offer opportunities, offer compassion, being gentle, turning on our curiosity, just a willingness to be open and to learn are the things that we can do that help us shift narratives, that help us move away from stigmatism and devaluing and dehumanization into a place of valuing. So I want to say, as we come to the end of this panel, what an honor it's been for me to be in this space with you and to be in this space with all of the audience. I hope it's meant as much to you as it has meant to me. And I thank you all very much, and all the panelists, and for a wonderful conversation. So I want to turn it back over to Kelly, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Can I just chime in with one last question? The question is, what can donors do in terms of a call to action real quickly? If someone has, I have one response: support this work. That's my response. Has anyone else have a response?
And interrogate your own bias and racism, or isms, so you can actually not support the work with dissonance, but that you can really sort of throw yourself in 100% and support this work. Mm-hmm.
Love that. Anything else? So Kelly?
Yes, Diane, are you able to share the screen with the...
Let me just do one more. Can you see this? Hold on.
Yes, you can see. Yep.
There it is. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. So we want to thank each and every one of you for your attendance, participation, and engagement in the conversation. I have just a few reminders. One big one is that these women are producing videos where they talk more about their lives and experiences and their journeys. These stories are critical to our work. We cannot advocate and agitate towards liberation without knowing and hearing the wisdom in these stories. So please look out for these 10 videos. So you'll see Christina, Alisha, and Tamara, and then we have 7 other fellows. You'll see the 10 videos dropping in fall of 2022. So be on the lookout for that. I'd like to remind you to take the survey, which gives us feedback about how these sessions are landing for you. But we also have an opportunity in this month's survey for you to share your own story. We're very interested in your own narrative and your experiences and your orientation to this topic. So absolutely, please take the surveys. Helps us with our programming, and it helps us learn about what the needs are for our partners and community. And lastly, a reminder that the series is ongoing, so we'll continue to explore closing the gender wealth gap, and the dates and topics of upcoming sessions are listed here. We also want to continue the conversation about white supremacy and engage more with you, our partners and community. So check out our social media and website for announcements, and follow us for more info and invitations to join us in the fight. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It was such an honor. So great. Thank you all. And remember, this will be recorded, so we'll have it on our website. So we will share that with everyone, and resources. Thank you all. You are awesome.